On the morning of June 27, 2025, Russia's impregnable air defense system was blown to pieces near the town of Jankoy. A fleet of 36 cheap Ukrainian drones, some made from plywood, others powered by lawnmower engines, invaded the airspace of Russia's most fortified air defense site.
Early on June 27, 2025, Russia's so-called impenetrable air defense was left in tatters by the town of Jankoy. 36 Ukrainian drones, of which some were plywood contraptions and others flew on simple lawnmower engines, carried out the attack. They cost a mere $900,000. They targeted an S-400 missile battery that cost over $500 million. Within a span of less than 4 minutes, Russia's radar was destroyed, missile tubes blew up, and the pride of its air defense complex came crashing down in flames. How could a fleet of garage-built drones dismantle one of the most advanced electronic warfare systems in the world? What happened inside the walls of a base once considered untouchable? And what does this say about modern warfare, where the battles we prepare for are not the battles we actually fight? This is the untold story of Crimea's invisible invasion, and it was only the beginning. At 4:04 a.m. that morning, the skies above Crimea remained dark, with only faint stars and the light of revolving radar dishes illuminating them. For 3 years, the S-400 had been Western Crimea's shield, watched over by satellites and NATO's object of fear. But within 220 seconds, the shield was shattered. Just 480 meters distant, radar operators abruptly detected dozens of new contacts on the 92 N2E gravestone display. Initially 17, next 22, then all 36 drones, at 48 meters per second closing, stretching across a 5-kilometer front. The operators were shocked. The Pantsir S-1 defense system attempted a response, but too late. Its autocannons blazed away, but the math was against them. They had 12 missiles remaining and less than 70 seconds to eliminate 30 drones. One missile hit, destroying one drone in flight, but for every UAV down, 5 more advanced. The first drone hit at 4:04 and 18 seconds. A Beaver drone hit the primary 92 N2E radar face, triggering a shaped charge to blast off at the ideal angle. In a flash, a supersonic copper jet tore through the radar's waveguide, transmitters, and CPU. A $50 million marvel of engineering was turned to molten scrap. Seconds later, another drone smashed into the redundant dish. Its explosion ripped through the antenna's circuits and cut the 8-meter dish loose, shattering it on the ground. At 4:04 and 22 seconds, 2 additional drones struck the giant 91 N6E Big Bird radar. Both had 32 kilograms of raw explosives. The first shattered its base. The second destroyed it. The 40-ton system, which could track aircraft from 600 kilometers, fell from homemade bombs. Then came the knockout punch. At 4:04 and 45 seconds, Drone 13 struck the 5 P-85 TE-2 missile launcher, setting ablaze the solid fuel of its missiles. The temperatures rose to 2,800 degrees. Pressure within the launcher reached 300 atmospheres. The launcher exploded like a volcano, spewing steel and flames into the air. By 4:04 and 49 seconds, 12 drones remained in the air, approaching. The Pantsir was unarmed, no missiles, no ammunition. The crews simply stood by, using their binoculars to watch as 4 independent fireballs sent black smoke into the air. The S-400 defense system, once the pride of Russia's military might, lay dumb, warm, and in ashes. And the most horrifying truth of all, the war had just started. By 4:05 a.m., there were new threats. On the radar screen, 17 weak contacts flashed into existence. They were rapid, tiny, and almost undetectable, barely bigger than pigeons on the radar screen. The swarm moved forward in perfect coordination, changing altitude continually between 30 and 80 meters, splitting defenses that had to split their fire. The Pantsir S-1 went live once more. On paper, it could fire 4 targets simultaneously with 12 missiles and double 30mm cannons. But theory is one thing, reality was closing in quickly. In practice, the defense never had a chance. The Pantsir's targeting computers could hardly lock onto one drone. Its radar was intended for big, hot planes, not for crowds of whisper-quiet plywood drones made in civilian workshops. As the swarm converged to within 5 kilometers, impact countdown stood at 104 seconds. Under 2 minutes to detect, prioritize, engage, and annihilate 36 autonomous targets. All were approaching at 48 meters per second, each at a variable angle and altitude, mathematically impossible. The computer of the Pantsir took 12 seconds to completely take down one drone, 2 seconds to lock on, 1 to shoot, up to 8 seconds of flight time, and 2 seconds more to confirm the kill. The system was already overwhelmed with only 98 seconds to go. 157 E-6 missile fired, flying at Mach 3 through the air. It acquired a low-flying Scythe drone, but the proximity fuse malfunctioned. The missile flew just 2 meters past before exploding harmlessly above barren fields. The operator shifted to manual, employing optical sights. A second missile was fired, this time hitting true. Tungsten shards tore a drone in half. 1 down, 35 to go. Another Panzer entered the battle, launching 6 missiles in 18 seconds. 2 more drones were brought down, but it was a waste of time. The remaining 33 divided into strike units, each with a specific target: radar stations, missile launchers, command cars. From the top, it wasn't appearing chaotic. It appeared to be a war map that was moving. Targets indicated, vectors aligned, angles computed. This was not guesswork. This was coding and accuracy, and the defenders were attempting to outgun a storm with a bolt-action rifle. The Panzers were running low on ammunition, and the UAVs were coming into 2 kilometers. There was less than 1 minute left. Want to see how $900,000 worth of drones wiped out $500 million in defenses? Watch closely. At 4:47 a.m., the first drone struck. A Beaver-class UAV flying at 80 meters dove straight into the main 92 N2E gravestone radar, the beating heart of the S-400 battery. Its nose carried a 20-kilogram shaped charge, forged by Ukrainian engineers for one purpose: to punch through steel and hardened electronics. It did just that. Exploding at the ideal standoff range, the copper liner turned into a hypervelocity jet at Mach 23. It penetrated the radar housing like paper, tore apart the waveguide assembly, and ignited the internal parts in milliseconds. The blast didn't merely demolish a machine, it blinded a sector. 7 seconds after the initial impact, a second Beaver approached from the other direction, hitting the backup radar as it spun. Its shaped charge tore through the feed horn, the weakest link, and transmitted a shockwave along the system's electronic backbone. The 3-ton, 8-meter dish sheared off its mount and fell like a guillotine. Blind now, the S-400 could no longer discern. It couldn't lock, it couldn't fight. But the attack wasn't finished. At 4:48 and 22 seconds, 2 Scythe drones hit the 91 N6E Big Bird radar from the north. Their warheads were rough but potent, 32 kilograms of high explosive. The first shattered the base. The second ripped it apart. The 40-ton antenna, constructed to meet hurricane standards, shattered like rotten wood. Another Scythe hit the 5 P-85 TE-2 missile launcher. Its warhead penetrated 20 millimeters of steel armor and ignited the magazine within. A chain reaction ensued. 3 missiles worth $4.5 million each boiled in a fireball. Temperatures rose to 2,800 degrees. Pressure reached 300 atmospheres. The launcher blew sideways, showering burning shrapnel over the base. By 4:49 a.m., the last wave came. 3 Beaver drones flew low and high speed past the remaining radar elements on the south edge of the site. 60 kilograms of explosives combined destroyed what remained of the command systems. The S-400 battery, once considered the crown jewel of Russian air defense, was vanished. In a mere 3 minutes, Ukrainian drones had done what cruise missiles frequently could not do in 10. And they had done it without ever being detected. Russia finally realized that this had happened, but it was too late. At 4:50 a.m., twin AL-41F1 engines' thunder pierced the quiet above Belbek Air Base. 2 Su-35 multi-role aircraft had taken off 8 minutes previously in response to sporadic reports of a drone presence. Consuming more than 400 liters of fuel per minute, they rushed towards the reported location of the S-400 installation. But when they got there was nothing to defend. At 10,000 feet, the pilots were able to see the reality more vividly than any radar. 4 huge stacks of smoke, each over 500 meters high, reaching up into the dawn sky. Below the sweeping jets, the battlefield wrote its own story. Burned skeletons of radar domes, missile launchers, and command vehicles smoldered in the pre-dawn light, continuing to cook off with random secondary explosions. The thermal footprint of the strike was so large that it could be followed in real time by NATO satellites. The photo was irrefutable. The 92 N2E radars vanished. The 91 N6E Big Bird brought down. The 5 P-85 TE-2 launchers bent into tangled wreckage. The Pantsir units disassembled or exhausted beyond recognition. The Su-35 pilots did one pass, validating what their computers had already indicated. No lingering signals, no uplinks, no functioning electronics left behind. The S-400 system that had defended Western Crimea for 3 years hadn't only been breached, it had been eliminated, and in less than 4 minutes. No cruise missiles, no stealth jets, no cyber attacks. 36 cheap UAVs made of plywood and plastic, with lawnmower engines guided by lines of code. Russia's most sophisticated integrated air defense system, conceived to detect stealth bombers and shoot down hypersonic missiles, had been undone by locally made drones flying literally underneath it. The lesson was impossible to miss. Despite all its missiles, radar antennae, and high-tech bravado, Moscow had been caught napping not by sheer power, but by accuracy and a new style of war, where rapidity and surprise were more important than bulk and steel. The smoke had barely cleared when analysts in Europe, the United States, and Asia started analyzing what had happened. What they witnessed was not merely a battlefield defeat, it was a technology reckoning. Within less than 4 minutes, a squadron of low-cost Ukrainian drones, some of which were constructed in makeshift furniture workshops, had taken down a $500 million Russian air defense system that was once thought to be impenetrable. No satellites were required, no F-35S, no high-tech cyber attacks, only intelligent design, low altitude, and merciless brutality. The attack introduced a new equation for warfare in the 21st century: ingenuity and timing, cost and scale. Each of the Ukrainian drones cost from $25,000 to $40,000. Less than one missile launched by the very machines they destroyed. For less than $1 million, Ukraine had wiped out years of Russian deployment, maintenance, and deterrence, longer than it takes to boil a pot of coffee. And the consequences extended far beyond Crimea. Military thought across the globe had been predicated on the presumption that layered defenses would hold off any airborne attack. That presumption was broken. The S-400's long-range missiles never even got fired. Its radar arrays never detected the targets. Its close-range defenses were swamped by drones they weren't programmed to recognize. The actual surprise wasn't even in the devastation, it was in how little it cost to accomplish. For each dollar Russia had invested in the S-400, Ukraine had invested only 2 cents in plywood and code, and it was Ukrainian code, not Russian hardware, that won out. In a world where drones can cost less than a second-hand motorcycle, but are intelligent enough to outsmart billion-dollar defense systems, the question isn't who is most powerful, but who best knows the battlefield. For war has fundamentally changed. And for the first time in decades, the future of air defense does not belong to the biggest spender. It belongs to the fastest thinker. What occurred during the early morning hours of June 27, 2025, was a surprise in tactics. It was a revolution in strategy. Within 227 seconds, Ukraine didn't just blast radars and missile tubes, it demolished assumptions. It destroyed the time-honored conviction that power was to be calculated in weight, price, or reach. This was not an airstrike, it was a message. Agility trumps complexity in the new war. Silent, small arms guided by smart brains can quiet the biggest machines. And billions of dollars are worthless if your adversary can outsmart your senses altogether. For Russia, the cost was eye-popping. $500 million down, an air defense system destroyed, and an exhibition of vulnerability around the world. For Ukraine, it was an asymmetric strategy masterclass, fought using consumer technology and warfighting algorithms. And for the remainder of the world, particularly countries still betting everything on stronger and larger, it was a warning. War is not won by who shoots first, but by who sees the battlefield differently. If this video made you see the future of war differently, if it got you to reconsider what constitutes true power in the modern world, then help us keep these stories alive. Like, subscribe, and share this video with us so that we can bring truth, insight, and clarity to a world that needs it now more than ever before. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay ready.